Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today for this critical discussion on gender-based violence. My name is Dimo Atanasov. I am from Plovdiv, professor at the Agricultural University Plovdiv. Just before we start, I would like to underline some remarks. This event will be recorded and will be uploaded to the UNIgreen YouTube channel for informative purposes. After each presentation, you will have possibility to ask your questions and to receive answers from our speakers. You also may use the chat at any time to share comments or ask questions, and I will address these questions to our speakers, and I hope to have opportunity to be a good discussion. So let me say a few words about myself. I am Vice Rector at the Agricultural University Plovdiv, responsible for international activities and research. I am involved in the UNIgreen project. I've been involved for the last 2 years as professor, and also in the work package 5. I found it very interesting, even though I'm not specialist in this matters, but it is very good. So let's hope this discussion and this webinar today is fruitful, and we all learn about gender-based violence, and not just that, but how to combat this problem. Gender-based violence encompasses a wide range of harms and injustice. It is an issue that knows no borders, impacting people of all backgrounds, genders, and identities. Our goal today is to confront this complex issue head-on, sharing insights, listening to diverse perspectives, and imagining new pathways towards meaningful change and healing. Today, we will all have the opportunity to see the presentations of our speakers. They will direct our attention towards some key aspects of the gender-based violence, the problems that this can cause to society, and the models and good practices that may work for their resolution. As you probably know, the organizer of this discussion is the group of people working in the work package 5 of the European Green University Alliance, UNIgreen. I would like to thank our colleagues from HEPL Liège for this initiative and for the organization of this event, and also to all other colleagues from the work package 5 from the UNIgreen project. Let me introduce a little bit the UNIgreen. UNIgreen is an alliance of 8 higher education institutions that are committed to promoting excellence and education, research and innovations, and the development of knowledge and solutions towards greener and more sustainable Europe. The main mission missions of UNIgreen are support the green transition, to provide an updated scientific and technological framework to skill, upskill, reskill, and empower existing and future professionals and experts in the field of sustainable agriculture, green biotechnology, and environmental and life sciences, to master the green transition and lead the development of the European green economy. Boost innovation, to attract talented students, staff, researchers, and stakeholders from around the world to be at the center stage of innovations and co-create and test innovative solutions to enhance local and regional development. Globally connected, to bring education, research, innovation, and services to society into alignment through collaborative global partnerships for knowledge-based society that promotes smooth transitions of students to international labor markets, mainstreams, green knowledge and practices, and inspire education and training institutions worldwide to link and act green for all and with all, to provide an inclusive and blended education environment based on the principles of equality and diversity, free of all types of violence, harmful speech, discrimination, and gender stereotypes. The main objectives of work package 5. This is the work package that I was initially involved, and the main objectives of this is to raise awareness and educate the Alliance academic community on the topics of diversity, equality, inclusiveness, and multiculturalism, to create a welcoming environment for the Alliance academic community, to increase the visibility and reduce the barriers to the integration of groups that are underrepresented or at risk of discrimination, gender, ethnic, racial, age, social, religious, etc. The Work Package 5 is the guardian of the Alliance diversity, equality, inclusiveness, and multiculturalism strategy. Now, I would like to extend a special welcome to our panelists, each of whom brings unique expertise and lived life experience to this conversation. In order of their presentations, first, Vanesa Pérez-Martínez. She is teaching and research staff in the Department of Community Nursing, Preventative Medicine and Public Health and History of Science of University of Alicante. Graduated in Psychology, Master's degree in Criminological and Victimological Intervention, and Master degree in Public Health. Maïlys Derenemesnil. She is lawyer at the Bogny Public Prosecutor's Office, lawyer, researcher, former literature professor, trainer on equality and the fight against sexual violence, researcher on the voice of women, victims of sexual violence in the French criminal justice system. Emilia Koycheva. She is lecturer in Bulgarian and English language, director of the Department of Languages and Sport at Agricultural University Plovdiv, and UNIgreen Work Package 5 member. Her research interests are in the field of language teaching, methodology, as well as multiculturalism, classroom challenges, etc. Natália Cardoso. She is specialist in sexual and dating violence in the context of higher education, the experience of APAV in Polytechnic University of Coimbra, graduated in law from the Faculty of Law of the University of Coimbra, and manager of the Victim Support Office of Coimbra from 1997 to the present. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge the potentially distressing nature of some topics we will discuss today. Thank you again for being part of this dialogue and for your courage and commitment to creating a world free of violence and discrimination. With that, let's begin by getting to know our panelists. And I suggest after each panelist presents her presentation. We ask questions and have answers. And after that, we will have something like a wrap up. And then we will have the opportunity to answer this survey. So let me ask Vanesa Pérez-Martínez if she's ready with her presentation, just to upload it here and share with us.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this event. I think that this is a great space to share our knowledge and experience. So, my name is Vanesa. I'm a researcher from the University of Alicante. And the presentation of today, I'm going to show you an European project that we are leading from our university that is called Uni for Equity. I'm going to do a general presentation of the project regarding to the general objectives and specific ones. And then I'm going to focus on primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention. That I think that is the strongest point of this project. In this European project are participating a total of 6 universities. One of them is the University of Antwerp from Belgium, the Adam Mickiewicz University from Poland, the University of Majutica from Portugal, the University of Applied Science Burgenland Campus from Austria, the University of Verona from Italy, and the University of Alicante from Spain, and is participating a non-governmental organization that is CESIE from Palermo, Italy, and another private center that is called Aplica from Madrid that is helping us with the qualitative and quantitative data of the project. So, the Uni for Equity project has the general objective of strengthening the ability of universities to identify and respond to sexual harassment in the workplace and other relevant settings as classroom or digital space, with an explicit but not exclusive focus on social inequalities. The specific aims of this project are reinforced teams, networks, and equality units tackling sexual harassment, to promote mutual learning and exchange of successful experiences between universities, to contribute to social awareness and to improve professional skills, tools, and resources to address sexual harassment, to reduce risk factors for exposure to sexual harassment in the university community, to minimize the impact of sexual harassment on victims, to contribute to the knowledge of universities as an asset to prevent and act against sexual harassment, and to address sexual harassment as a priority issue in the university community. Our target groups in this project are university students, but also teaching and administration staff, and others as public institutions, associations, and private companies. We are considering and including social minority groups in our community of the university. In this project are participating people in charge of the different centers at the university, and also external stakeholders and collaborators, and local, national, and European authorities. So, the main tenet of this project is that we are trying to reach and work from social equity with a wide participation of the university community, and we are using in this project mixed methods approach to collect and evaluate all the data. So first of all, we carry out a multi-country mixed method initial assessment where we aim to identify the strengths and weaknesses of universities regarding to existing strategies against sexual harassment. And we used online survey for the quantitative data, but we also carried out in-depth interviews for qualitative data, and we did a desk review about the resources of the universities. We are designing and we want to implement a primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention activities at institutional, social, and interpersonal level. And of course, we are going to carry out an evaluation about qualitative and quantitative data. So regarding to the Mixo method initial assessment, we carried out a desk review that it consists a mapping across all universities on the resources, services, initiatives, data, and other information available in their context on each university's capacity to prevent and respond to sexual harassment. A total of 150 strategies and initiatives were assessed. We reviewed, for example, some aspects, for example, as institutional sexual harassment resources or services within the university, resources, services offered or promoted by non-university organizations, primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention activities, data on sexual harassment or other related documents, institutional plans, strategies, and guidelines at university level, and also sexual harassment legislation and policies affecting each university. We carried out an online survey to collect quantitative information. In this case, it was a purposive sampling where faculty, administration, and services staff and students participated in this. We used the platform Qualtrics to collect the quantitative information, and the duration of the online survey was approximately 15 minutes. And the information was collected between January and March 2024. And the final sample was 63 people. More than a half were women, and more than a half were students. For the qualitative intervention, we carried out semi-structured interviews with 15 key informants per university. These key informants were university staff, student representatives, people in decision-making positions, and representatives of external institutions. This information was collected between November 2023 and February 2024, and 89 participants in total participated in these semi-structured interviews. So, as I said before, one of the strongest points of this project is that we are designing and we want to implement primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention strategies at social level, organizational level, and interpersonal level. When we are talking about primary prevention, we are talking about universal interventions aimed at groups or the general population without regard to individual risk. For example, violence prevention curricula delivered to all students or community-wide media campaigns. About secondary prevention, they are more selected interventions aimed at those considered a higher risk for sexual harassment, specifically addressed separately to women and men of different interest groups, for example, teachers, students, or administrative staff. And the tertiary prevention are indicated interventions addressing cases of sexual harassment aiming at perpetrators and victims. So we are going to designing all of this type of interventions, primary, secondary, and tertiary. I want to show you an example for primary preventions that we are developing and implementing, because the primary prevention is right now in the project the most complete program that we have right now in this stage of the project. So I want to show you an example. For example, at social level, we are carrying out a social campaign in each university, specifically in the University of Alicante in Spain. We created, for example, stickers with short messages about sexual harassment. For example, sexual harassment is a crime. You have to say a sexual harassment situation if you are witnessing one of them. And we disseminate all these stickers around the campus. We created our social media too. Each university has their own. So, for example, in case of the University of Alicante, we created a lot of Instagram posts. These that you are seeing are about myths about sexual harassment. For example, a myth about sexual harassment is that it's not common. So we answer this or respond this myth with a justification, with a scientific justification, and we post all of this in our social media. And in the University of Alicante too, we created for social campaign our own podcast, for example, that is called Que no nos determinen in Spanish. Here you have the Instagram account if you want to know what are we doing. But well, we have in total this first season like 8 or 9 chapters, and each episode of the podcast is about one form of gender-based violence. And we have a lot of sections in the podcast. One of them is about our project Uni for Equity, that we give information about the progress of the project. And well, each chapter is about one topic, for example, masculinities and health, or pornography and sexual violence, or for example, sexism in video games. And we invite a researcher that is a specialist in this topic, researcher or another people that are working in the topic, so we can share knowledge and well, we have all the episodes in the platform, Spotify, books, YouTube. So well, regarding to the primary prevention at organizational level, we analyzed the protocols of each university to know if exists a specific protocol to address sexual harassment. The results indicated to us that, for example, the University of Alicante has the protocol for the prevention and intervention against sexual harassment, harassment on the ground of sex, or other forms of discrimination and gender-based violence. The University of Palermo has the Code of Conduct for the prevention of violence, harassment, and discrimination in the university context. The University of Maya has the Code of Good Conduct to prevent and combat violence and harassment. Adam Mickiewicz University has the Quality Policy and Fight Against Discrimination. And the University of Antwerp has 2 protocols, one for employees and one for students, about the internal procedure in cases of harassment. So in general, all the universities have their own protocol to address sexual harassment, but this could be an opportunity to improve each protocol when we finish the project. And regarding to the individual level, we are planning and we want to do an intervention at primary, secondary, and tertiary level. We are developing workshops to intervene with workers and with students of the university. The primary prevention is about the primary prevention workshop is about why does sexual harassment happen, uncovering 8 routes for more effective prevention. The secondary prevention workshop is about take action against sexual harassment at the university, and the tertiary prevention workshop is about gray areas of sexual harassment and other forms of gender-based violence at the university. We are working on that. I'm going to show you an example of the primary prevention workshop because it's the most complete draft that we have right now in this stage of the project. For example, we plan this workshop with the following objectives. that are to critically rethink and self-reflect on personal gender-related views, behaviors, norms, and values, to increase awareness on gender, intersectionality, and power dynamics in the academic society, to create a safer working and academic environment, to contribute to education and awareness raising about the importance of positive and healthy interpersonal relationships based on respect, to enable the university community to acknowledge gender discrimination and sexual harassment, and to endorse the university community in challenging sexist and tolerant attitudes towards gender-based violence and sexual harassment. So this primary prevention workshop is composed by 4 sessions in total. We plan that in each workshop, we are going to evaluate before the intervention and after the intervention the knowledge of the participants about the topics of sexual harassment. So, for example, in the session 0 is more an introduction about the project and workshop contents that the participants are going to receive, and also we are going to do the pre-assessment survey. The session 1 is about gender-based violence in social learning context. The session 2 is about gender-based violence and sexual harassment in workplace. And the session 3 is about sexual harassment and other forms of gender-based violence in the academia. And we are going to do the post-assessment of the workshop in this session 2. We want to do all the workshops participative, and we use a lot of, for example, a case study analysis for the 3 levels of prevention, the 3 workshops. Here is an example of the case study analysis about the session 2, that is gender-based violence and sexual harassment in workplace. So the participants are going to read the case study and to answer the questions. For example, here we have an example of case study analysis. Johanna, a 22-year-old lesbian line cook, complained to the restaurant management about inappropriate invitations to sexual contact by his 60-year-old chef with a chronic health condition named Anthony. Anthony strongly denied all the accusations, manifesting that he was the victim and he was suffering from all the stress Johanna had caused him. The restaurant did not investigate the complaint, and the restaurant manager fired Johanna, reasoning that it was easier to replace a line cook than a chef. Despite this, when going back to work, co-workers blamed Noah for the harassment suffered. So the participants are going to discuss about types of sexual harassment present in this case, for example, to identify the power imbalance, to identify protective and risk factors, and to assemble strategies that should be adopted at individual, leadership, and organizational. So our aim with this workshop is that participants improve the critical thinking of participants to detect, in this case, sexual harassment and how to act. And well, this is for more information. If you want to know more about the project, here is the link of the quality unit of the University of Alicante and the QR if you want to scan it. So in this webpage, we are going to publish the progress of the project and the results and so on. So thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any question, I would like to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Very impressive presentation. Thank you very much. It was very interesting for me. I hope our participants also liked it. And now it's the time for them to ask questions. If they have any questions, please input them here in the chat so we can see the questions, and Vanessa may try to answer. By the time we wait for people to write the questions down, I can because when you were presenting, a few questions just arise in me, just to clarify some of the points of your presentation, of the aspects of your presentations. Which type of information, when you did the survey, yes, and you gathered some qualitative and some quantitative information and data, which type of information you think was most efficient and gave you the best data to analyze and to discuss?
Well, yes, we collected quantitative and qualitative data. For example, for quantitative data, we collected information about 3 main sections. One about sociodemographic characteristics, for example, sex, gender, age. One aspect about university climate regarding sexual harassment, and one about knowledge and perception of university health resources. This is the 3 main sections. And for qualitative data, the collected information was in line with the quantitative data. So we asked the participants about information, about perceptions of sexual harassment, knowledge of resources of the university, perceptions and assessment of the university resources, or for example, barriers and facilitators in the access to resources and risks, opportunities, or for example, policy recommendation that they had, for example.
Yeah, thank you. And are you happy with the results that this survey provided after asking? And how many people did you reach with this survey?
With the non-survey, we reached around 7,000 people. And well, we are working on the data right now because we have a lot of data, quantitative and qualitative. But for example, just to give you a summary of the data about the prevalence of victims of sexual harassment in global results in all the universities. For example, there was 26% of men that have been suffered sexual harassment and 43% of women. And we have a lot of data. For example, the most experienced situations about sexual harassment was those related with sexist remarks, sexual stories of jokes, for example, offensive sexually suggestive comments or gestures. So well, we are working on the data, but this is more or less the resume.
And you did some interventions, yes, or you are preparing some interventions.
We are preparing.
What is your opinion? How they will work better if these interventions are face-to-face, you talk to people, victims, or you provide online interventions and reach out, or social media? What do you think?
Well, it depends on the context. We are preparing all the prevention strategies face-to-face, but with easy adapting to online. For example, in our case, in the University of Alicante, the intervention with students are going to be face-to-face because we think that is more participative for them and easy to understand. But for example, with the workers of the University of Alicante, it's easier to do it online because, well, they have a lot of classes and a lot of schedules, so we have to adapt the program to the workers.
Thank you. I see one question from Giacomo, which says that he thinks it is very important to raise awareness of these issues, and he is interested to know how universities can ensure correct information at all levels. If you can give some examples can you? Or how universities can ensure correct information at all levels.
But sorry, Giacomo, are you saying about, for example, the social media, or are you or about the prevention programs, for example?
Well, I don't think he can speak.
Okay.
He can write. Just okay. I have one question connected to the example that you already gave to us with the 22-year-old Johanna. That was that has this unpleasant experience with her boss, probably at the place that she worked. How can workplaces better support individuals affected by such gender-based violence? Do you have any idea after this happened to anybody and he or she feels violated and she's not comfortable, and then she needs to go back to work, and the workplace, her colleagues and how can they make it easier for this person to bear with this occasion or with the past and move on?
Yeah, it's a difficult answer because I think that we have to work at different levels. I think that the best protection for the worker is that it has to be a great policy in sexual harassment situations that protects the worker. That's the first of all for me. But regarding, for example, the partners or the friends where he or she are working with, I think that it's necessary to do an intervention or to give information about sexual harassment to their own workers or of the job. So I think that is political and individual. It's important.
Okay. Thank you very much again, Vanesa. And now, Maïlys, are you ready?
Yes. So thank you so much for inviting me. I am very honored to share my perspective within such an important topic. There are necessary and valuable moments to exchange our experiences and learn from experts in other fields and from different countries. In my presentation, I will aim to provide an overview of the development in supporting and grasping the concept of consent based on several experiences as a lawyer and trainer in gender-based violence prevention in academia, as well as a legal expert who has worked for the French State Prosecutor's Office. I'm also a criminal researcher working on the language used by women who are victims of sexual violence in the French criminal justice system. So just a week before the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, it is clear that the outlook for 2024 appears bleak. Everywhere in the world, whether in times of peace or war, women and girls continue to face harassment, assault, deprivation of liberty under international human rights law, rape, and murder. Gender-based violence continues to be used to dominate and annihilate human rights as weapon of mass destructive could do. France is no exception to the observations. The content of the debates and comments in the Mazan trial sadly illustrates the still very archaic and misogynistic views held by some in France. So I will I want to ask one question. How recent legal and professional developments in French criminal justice system and academia, my two fields, have helped improve support for victims and take into account the concept of consent? So, sorry. Before going further, I would like to clarify a few terminological points. Firstly, in France, the expression gender-based violence doesn't appear in legislation nor in jurisdiction. Similarly, while the term sexist and sexual violence is widely used in society or within other institutions, it's not commonly used in the justice system, which focuses more on the concept of domestic violence, which in my opinion is extremely limited and only concerns one aspect of systemic violence against women. In both cases, the systemic approach is not reflected in the term used. Secondly, the term consent can be understood in two ways in this presentation. On one end, the absence of consent at the funding acts of gender-based violence. On the other end, the consideration of victims' consent in the support process. So in my first part, I want to talk about the recent developments in French law and the criminal justice system and the pursuit of a multidisciplinary treatment approach. Similar to French society, where the use of the term sexist and sexual violence has become widespread in the media, the criminal justice has adopted this vocabulary. The widespread use of this term reflects a form of recognition of the reality of this violence and the necessity of addressing them. In this regard, the criminal justice has recently come to realize that the support and treatment of such violence must be part of a multidisciplinary approach, social sciences, health, association, etc., particularly with respect to victim support. I will discuss in this part 2 points that I believe are relevant for describing recent development in the care and support of victims. The first one is fighting secondary victimization, improving the legal process for victims of sexual and sexist violence to prevent better support. I want to take 3 examples of a new way to better support victims. The first one is the police reports at hospital. In 2091, France won the Crystal Balance Award for its innovative convention between criminal police and health professionals to gather complaints of domestic violence victims at the hospital. Since then, these partners have been multiplied everywhere. That means that victims can stay at the hospital, and if they want to report, a policeman can go to the hospital. But first of all, she is in hospital with experts, with medical former experts. The second example is the friendship of multidisciplinary team, which can be found in police station or brigades. In theory, each police station in France must be composed by a multidisciplinary team to be possible to detect violence and to hear a complaint in order to avoid second victimization. And the last one, very, very recent, the collection of evidence even without a complaint. On October 10, 2024, following an experiment initiated in 2023 in the medical legal service, an agreement was signed by the police prefecture of Paris, the Paris Hospital Authority, and the Paris Prosecutor's Office to allow the collection of evidence without the filing of a complaint, and hence access to justice and re-education of secondary victimization through encouragement to file a complaint. Here again, I think limiting those departments only to violence happening in the family, it's a mistake. Its aim is to prevent all gender-based violence. I want, on the second point, to talk about different ways to help and support women victims of violence. So specific measures and procedures have been put in place to protect and support victims. They are the results of the work on observation of professionals like judges, lawyers, etc., etc. The first one is the grave danger téléphone grand danger in French, which has been established by a law on August 2014. This is a prevention mechanism against new sexual violence by providing the victim with a geolocated mobile phone, enabling 20 hours and 7-day assistance in case of severe danger. Really, when I was in the prosecutor office, I really saw women saved with this téléphone grand danger. The anti-approach bracelet, this is a measure introduced by a law on December 2019. And it's a mobile electronic surveillance device which is supposed to prevent the aggressor from approaching the victim against domestic violence only. Again, I really saw victims saved with this procedure, and then it's very reassuring for them to know that they can be saved at any time. And then it's the creation of specialized units in the fight against domestic violence. Starting in January 2024, each jurisdiction in France will have a special department for intra-family violence with various professionals, judges, prosecutors, victims associations, social workers, legal experts, doctors, etc. This aims to ensure comprehensive and quick follow-up. I wanted to expose a little the debate surrounding the inclusion of the term consent in criminal law related to rape and sexual assault. And if you have other questions, I will answer after. So, a collective of researchers, legal professionals, advocates for reform of how criminal law in line with the commitments made by France upon ratifying the Istanbul Convention, and especially the Article 36, which introduced the term of non-consensual. French criminal law, as you can see, French criminal law is indeed characterized by the absence of consent in the definition of rape and sexual assault. After an initial rejection by France of the European directive, the Minister of Justice announced a new review. Supporters of the introduction of consent believe that the judge will focus on the behavior of the accused rather than that of the victim. The key will be to assess that to what extent the accused ensures the victim's consent. After talking about my experience in French criminal justice, I want to expose briefly the example of academia in France. Since here it's a campaign of communication about consent by the Ministry of Academia in France. So in academia, since 2019, there is a highly ambitious plan to prevent all forms of gender-based violence and discrimination for all academic institutions. In practice, this means higher education institutions must have, under penalty, a system for reporting sexist and sexual violence that fulfills 3 objectives: prevention, supporting victims, and sanction. It is in this context that I, along with colleagues from academia and research, was led to create a network of experts working in higher education institutions and research with the aim of training the entire community, For my part, I primarily focus on training related to supporting victims, criminal and administrative procedure, and academics ethics. Here, a few observations based on my experience over the past 6 years. Victim support has greatly improved, thanks also to a multidisciplinary approach, healthcare, social service, administration, etc. Partnership with associations and also with the judiciary. Today, the focus in university is less on prevention and more on treatment and support. That means that we have taken a new step forward. I observe an evolution in the consideration of the victim's consent in the procedure, and that means a lot. Indeed, it's important to note that within these frameworks, obtaining the victim's consent to proceed with any state is a core principle, which was not the case before. As an anecdote, I had trained the general inspectors of higher education and research in 1991, and initially their procedural reflex was to alert the authorities at the first report, in accordance with the law. But gradually, with their growing experience of this form of violence, their approach evolved. Priority given to the victim consent, except in case of particular urgency. And now this is the doxa. We have to respect the consent of victims. So before answer question, I wanted to give 3 recommendations and like conclusion. I think that the most important is to continue to train and educate extensively at all levels, particularly through a systematic reminder of the legal and regulatory framework, because I note that when you don't study law, you don't know the law in France. That means that you don't know what you have, what is your right and what you can do. So it is very important that everyone know the law. Continue and intensify multidisciplinary work, integration of medical research, social sciences, etc., because it helps a lot justice to improve is supporting victim. And then educate on the concept of consent and intimacy from an early age through standardized national policy. And I want to conclude with this beautiful word of a very famous French lawyer, who wrote during the X trial, another very famous trial, rape, like racism and the sexism to which it belongs, is a serious symptom of sociocultural pathology. A society afflicted by rape can only help if, after diagnosing the issue, it is willing to radically question the major mechanism of its cultural apparatus and its content. Thank you for your attention.
Your microphone, Dimo.
Thank you, Maïlys. It was very remarkable presentation. Thank you for it. I see that there are some questions. People are calling me on my phone that some of them cannot get into the chat, and maybe for some of them the chat isn't active. I see that 47 people are in the meeting, but anyway, I have some of the questions, and if you allow me, I will read one of them. What are the obstacles to progress in favor of victims in the justice system and the academic world? This is one question.
Okay. Can you repeat, please? Because I was looking for my screen.
Yes. Did you hear?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, if you're not confident that you can answer some of the questions, just we can go to the next ones.
Okay.
So one of the questions was, what are the obstacles to progress in favor of victims in the justice system and the academic world?
I think it's a very big question. First of all, I think that there is a very lack of money and people. That means that it's difficult to answer everyone, especially in justice. For example, a judge in France has more files than days in 1 year. So it's just not possible to work in this condition. So it's not a secret, but if we want to continue, public policy must be more ambitious, and we have to spend a lot of money and to have more people.
Okay. Another one, I think you already answered in some way, but another question is, where does the awareness in the academic world come from?
It was because after a survey in 27, I don't remember exactly, but there was a survey which revealed that the victim in the academia was more important than in the national. So it was the first survey in France in the academic world, because in the academic, people thought that there is no problem because we are very clever people. And when the academic world discovered that there was a lot of declaration of victim, the problem began to be resolved. But it's not, we need a lot of year, but in 6 years, I really saw the difference.
Thank you. One question here in the chat and in the question and answers, I think it came just a few minutes ago. How victims of stalking are legally protected in France?
Very interesting
I think
question,
because yeah, you are a lawyer and maybe you're competent in this.
We are not very good in France to protect a victim of internet and numerical assault or harassment. But now, if you have the proof, if you show that someone is stalking you, you can be, and if you know the people, the author, it's possible to have the benefit of the procedure I talk about, like bracelet anti-rapprochement, if it's someone you know. But if it's someone you don't know, it's very difficult because we are not very in advance with the numerical assault. Yes,
I will ask you one question that it came from one of the participants, but he couldn't write it in the chat. His name is Georgi Todorchev, and he's asking whether social status or poverty of the victims provoke the violence. Is it how does gender-based violence intersect with other issues like poverty or social status? Do you have any observations on this?
In justice, we see more poor victims because rich people talk less than rich people. So it's not it's difficult to know how is the part of victim, poor victim and richest victim, because the popular people are closer, to the police or to the justice. So we have a base to understand that, and I think that we have a lot of work to do to understand the discrimination in general, because we have a problem because we separate each problem. It's like now we have a specialized service of domestic violence, but it's not really related to other discrimination like racism or classism. So it's very difficult to understand, to grasp this link.
Yes. He also asked whether most of the victims are women. Are they women? Have you any observations about gender-based violence against men, for example?
Injustice?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The problem that, like I said, that we don't, in French justice, we don't think with this concept of gender-based violence, but just domestic violence, which was before violence against women. So the violence against men are not linked to a gender-based violence. It was like.
Yeah. You mean they're not physical violence, yeah, but maybe mental or psychological.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
there is. Yeah.
Yeah,
and there are a lot of different studies now, different studies. It's new, but in the academic field that study especially the violence against men and the speciality.
Yeah, and I see, and I think this will be the last question for you. Do you think our societies will evolve to always get a proof of consent? Well, we are living in a democracy, and our societies should be very vibrant on such issues. But
yes,
is the justice in our society, the institutions that have to provide this justice, are they correct? Or sometimes they do not judge in favor of the real victims?
It's a whole institution, but it's really changing. There is a lot of training for the judges and for the prosecutors to help to change the institution. So I think we are going to the good way, but it's long, and like I said, it's a very difficult job. And in France, we have few judges and few prosecutors, respectively other European country. So it's difficult for that too.
Well, thank you very much, Maïlys. Thank you very much. Stay in touch, and if any other questions come until the end of this meeting, you will be available. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
I hope Emilia is getting ready for her presentation. Emi, are you?
Yes, I'm ready.
Please share your presentation on the screen.
Okay, just a minute. Thank you very much, and thank you for giving me the floor. I would like to thank you for making me part of this event. And I would like to say that it was very interesting for me to collect data and statistics regarding the gender-based violence, as I'm not a real specialist in this field, but it was really interesting. And I think that more people should be engaged and should be aware in these issues, and must contribute for the prevention of gender-based violence. I think that even one small action can lead to greater results and to better development in this field. In my presentation, I mostly focus on gender-based violence against women and girls, as I think these are most common types of violence. And I'm going to focus on the definition of gender-based violence, the forms and examples, some factors and risks, statistical data for the European Union and especially for Bulgaria. And I will list the legislation documents in Bulgaria regarding gender-based violence, the non-governmental organizations in Bulgaria, the main ones, or the bigger ones, and the forms of support and necessary actions of the communities and society. And now I want to say an introductory words that I have the chance to be a part of working package 5 for multiculturalism, diversity and inclusiveness, and members of this working package in the UNIgreen project, they pay special attention on gender equality and protection of fundamental human rights. And I think that gender-based violence is considered violence against human rights. So let us give as much as possible a clear definition on what is gender-based violence. According to the European Union and the European Commission, gender-based violence is the violence directed against a person because of that person's because of that person's gender, or violence that affects persons of a particular gender. Gender-based violence can take different forms and mostly affect women and girls. And it, of course, causes severe harm to all families and communities. So let us see which are the main forms of gender-based violence. They can be physical, psychological, economic, and sexual. I will define in a few words each of them. The physical form of violence results in injuries, distress, and health problems. Typical forms of physical violence are beating, strangling, pushing, and the use of weapons. And in the European Union, it is important to say that 31% of women have experienced one or more acts of physical violence since the age of 15. The sexual violence includes unconsented sexual acts or the attempts to these acts, or acts to traffic, human trafficking. The psychological violence includes mentally abusive behaviors such as controlling, economic violence, and blackmail. Gender-based violence causes also very economical cost, as it requires the involvement of different services: medical, police service, social services, or services in the justice system, and it makes people unable to work and to be included in education. So it has negatively effect on their productivity. I will give you some of the most common examples of gender-based violence against women. For example, the domestic violence, it includes all acts of physical, sexual, and psychological, and even economic violence that occur within the family or between intimate partners. Of course, intimate partner violence is linked greatly to the domestic violence, and it is more prevalent for women. According to the World Health Organization and a survey conducted in 2021, 27% of women aged from 15 to 49 had experienced some form of physical and sexual violence by their romantic partner or ex-partner. Sexual-based harassment includes unwelcome verbal, physical, or other non-verbal conduct of a sexual nature with the purpose or effect of violating the dignity of a person. Verbal abuse is another example of violence, and it represents threats of harm, manipulation, and mind games, and even isolating a woman or a girl from the family, friends, school, or work. It is also linked to emotional violence and abuse. Economic abuse happens when a person is made to be financially dependent on another person, and the abuser controls the victim's financial and other economic resources, and usually the victim is prohibited from getting a job or going to school. Forced marriage refers to marriage concluded under force, and it is closely linked to early marriages of very young children, girls, for example, who are wed before reaching the minimum age for marriage. Women and girls are very often vulnerable to trafficking, human trafficking, and human trafficking, most cases popular in this field are the sexual exploitation of women and the forced labor. Let us pay attention on a special form of violence, the cyber violence, or the so-called online violence. It is due to the increasing reach of the internet. The rapid spread of mobile information and the widespread use of social media has led to the emergence of cyber violence against women and girls as a growing global problem, with potentially significant economic and societal consequences. So it is very important for us as a community and society to prevent such violence forms. How can we do that? I think that the best way is to spread more information in schools and in universities, because these are the places with most girls available in these institutions. Let us see some of the main factors that can lead to gender-based violence. Some of them are lower levels of education, a history of exposure to child maltreatment, witnessing family violence, antisocial personality disorder, harmful use of alcohol, harmful masculine behaviors, including having multiple partners, community norms that privilege and ascribe higher status to men and a lower status to women, lower levels of women's access to paid employment, and lower level of gender equality. Of course, these are only some of the factors because there are plenty of other. Now I would like to share some statistical data for the European Union. According to Eurostat, the in a European Union survey, about 50% of the interviewed women believe that violence against women in their countries is common. In the examined countries, above 70% of the interviewed women say that they have experienced violence. So I think that it is very high percent, and we have to make more efficient activities and fights against violence. Now I will pay attention to the situation in Bulgaria. No matter of their social and ethnic status, there are numerous cases of women in Bulgaria who suffer from gender-based violence. And according to our the National Study on Domestic and Gender-Based Violence in Bulgaria, published by Partners Bulgaria Foundation in 2016, almost 90% of the interviewed police officers and social workers share that women become victims more frequently than men, not only of gender-based violence, but also the domestic violence. According to Eurostat and a survey in 2021, in Bulgaria, 21% of women who have ever been in a relationship have experienced violence by an intimate partner during their adult life. In total, 90% have experienced physical violence, including threats or sexual violence, while 19% have experienced psychological violence. Regarding the sexual harassment at work, in Bulgaria, around 12% of women who have ever worked have experienced sexual harassment at work, and up to 3% of women have experienced sexual harassment at work in the last 12 months, 7% in the last 5 years. Let's see some more statistical data. According to a survey on gender-based violence conducted by the Bulgarian National Statistical Institute and initiated by the European Commission, one of the most common perpetrators of violence against women is their intimate partner. Survey data show that more than 20% of women aging from 18 to 74 have experienced one or more acts of violence by an intimate partner. And we see that the younger women and girls have a higher risk of intimate partner violence compared to women in other age groups. According to the same survey, results show that sorry, wait a minute. Yes. According to the same survey, results show that among the types of intimate partner violence, psychological violence is the most important. As you can see, it is more than 90% of the responses of the interviewed women. And we see that physical violence is about 7%. It's very low. Physical violence, including threats, is more than 9%. We continue a little bit more with the same survey. And now you can see the share of women who have experienced sexual harassment at work by type of perpetrator. As you can see, 5% of the women answered that this is a colleague, the perpetrator is a colleague. Only 1.4% answered that the person conducted violence against them is in management position, and the highest level, above 10% of women answered that other employees, other colleagues of theirs conducted such violence against them. Regarding the emergency, phone numbers, the single emergency number in Bulgaria, I would like to say, is 112, which is available 24/7 and is free of charge. It is recognized, as you can see in the statistical data, it is recognized with more than 90% of the women interviewed. And very few of the women, about 36%, they are aware that there is another emergency phone line for such type of cases. This is the phone line of the Animals Association Foundation. Very few women answered that they are aware of on free legal aid, and they can be consulted with lawyers. What about legislation in Bulgaria regarding fighting against gender-based violence and criminalizing the forms of violence? We have the Criminal Code, the Family Code, Protecting Against Domestic Violence Act, Combating Trafficking in Human Beings Act, and Women, Peace and Security National Action Plan of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Some of the biggest non-governmental organizations in Bulgaria dealing with violence, and especially violence against women, are presented to you. First, we have the Red Cross Bulgaria, and its main activities are related to providing social assistance aimed at children and young people, and activities to raise awareness to young people on how to maintain their health and how to be protected from different kinds of risks. Another bigger foundation in Bulgaria is the Bulgarian Fund for Women. It is the largest national feminist fund working to empower women and girls and achieve gender equality in all spheres of life. The FLY Foundation, FLY is an abbreviation meaning first love yourself, and this foundation works for the prevention of women-based violence and support victims, and it is working in coordination with national and European partners. The Animals Association Foundation was founded in 1994 by women professionals in helping professions such as psychologists, psychotherapists, and social workers. And the mission of this association is to develop affordable services and programs, offering professional and competent help, creating public attitudes of tolerance, diversity, respect for the suffering and victims, and rejection of violence. When we talk about the European Union, for example, I don't think that there is a country in Europe and European Union in which there is no national women's helpline. And we can see that in European countries, 80% of the countries has at least one national women's helpline. I have already told you that Bulgarian helpline for all emergencies is 112. Of course, all European countries have support centers and help organizations, women organizations, and which are working with the police and social services in the countries. And I think an important problem here is that most victims, women and girls, they maybe they are ashamed or afraid to seek help in these organizations or support services. So I think that it is very important for us, for more people to spread information on such organizations and help services, and more women and girls be informed and be sure that in any time they need, they can provide help. What actions can we take against gender-based violence? On governmental level, governments can pass and enforce laws and national action plans, of course, to prevent violence against women and to protect women and girls, and invest in women's movements and prevention programs. On company level, companies and institutions can implement policies that have zero tolerance towards all forms of violence against women and that actively support survivors. It is very important to raise awareness and organize events promoting prevention, for example. And each person can use their creativity to promote a message of zero tolerance to violence against women and girls. And I think that people with their small, I have already told that people with small actions and in small steps, they can make great for the development of this issue. As Maïlys already mentioned in her presentation, the 25th of November is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and we can choose this date or, for example, the November month in each of our institutions to make more events regarding gender-based violence at all levels. So what is the main what is the main logo of the International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women? It is to raise awareness and to take action to end violence against women and girls. As a conclusion, I found some very good citations from the site of the United Nations, and I'd like to share with you. Violence against women and girls is a major public health problem rooted in gender inequality and is also a serious violation of human rights. And it affects life and health of millions of women. We need more investment in women's organizations, better legislation, prosecution of perpetrators, more services for survivors, and training for law enforcement officials. And the last one I like the most. Ending violence against women is everyone's business. I also found a very nice citation of the American author and activist Maya Angelou, who said that, who says, I am a woman, phenomenal woman, that's me. And I think that each girl and woman should repeat that every day. I would like to thank you very much for your attention. I hope that it was an interesting presentation.
Thank you, Emilia. Your presentation was also phenomenal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see some questions already here in the chat. And one of them is, do you have information what forms of violence are the most common in Bulgaria? Please, short answers, because we don't have that much time. We have to leave some time for Natália.
Okay,
Cardoso.
the most common forms of violence against women, in my opinion, the domestic violence is really a very serious issue in our country, in Bulgaria. And due to mass media and social media, we are informed almost every day of such cases of domestic violence. And it can be even children even can be affected of this violence, because if it happened in the family, children witnessed such type of violence, and it is very bad for their health and emotional health.
One opinion, which is again something that has happened to one of our participants today. I will not say his name, but he says, I was witnessing verbal and physical harassment, and when I interacted to prevent further action from the abusers, I was put into court for harming the aggressors. And his question is what we have to do as society to prevent that type of harassment when for trying to help may lead to bad consequences for us. Well, this question is not just personally to you, but in one sentence, if you can answer just your
I think
opinion.
that it is really disturbing, but the person who is offended or violenced, I think it should seek help not only in police or in social services, but in organizations protecting women against violence. I think this is the better. More you are informed, the more you are informed, and the more you seek help, it is the better.
Yeah. And the last one, the statistical data for the EU countries shows something very similar for each country. The gap between them is not very high. Do you think a European regulation for each country is more interesting than national politics? I think the question is, shall there be a European legislation that is common for all the countries, or each country should have its own legislation based on their specifics?
I think especially for the European Union countries, they have to stick to the European legislation, and in this case, the legislation against gender-based violence. So I think that European legislation, acts and documentations, they are really good and we can stick to them. So they have a scope of very general cases, and they are good for acting.
Thank you, Emilia.
Thank you very
much for the presentation and for the answers to the questions. And now I am happy to give the floor to Natália Cardoso. Natália, it's you.
Thank you for this invitation, and I want to especially to thank to Cristina Faria from the Polytechnic University in Coimbra that invited me to share my experience. I work in a non-governmental organization, APAV. It's the Portuguese Association for Victim Support. Sorry, it seems that I'm sure. Okay, and I'll start. I try to be to speak not so long as as it was as it was first because of the weight of as we are late. I'll try not to share everything. But I must present the organization. APAV, it's a charity organization, and we believe that the statute of the crime victims must be fully acknowledged, valued, and effective. And we work to achieve this goal in Portugal and beyond. And our mission is to support victims of crime, their families and friends, providing them with free, qualified, and confidential services, and contribute to the improvement of public, social, and private policies centered in the statute of the victim. So we are also an organization that are supported by volunteers. Of course, not only volunteers, we have professionals, paid professionals, but we have many volunteers working with us, and we are also governed by the principles of equal opportunities, treatment, and non-discrimination. Now in Portugal, we have 84 community-based services. One of them is the place where I work, the Victim Support Office in Coimbra. We also have a helpline, not 24-hour helpline, but it's from 8 o'clock to 11 in the night, 8 in the morning to 23 hours. It's a free call. And also people can contact us by the social network. We also run the Safer Internet Helpline in Portugal. We have shelters for domestic violence victims, 3 shelters, and 2 shelters for human trafficking victims. And I have to speak a little bit more about this specialized support networks because it has to do with the theme that I will be talking. So one of these helplines is the HOPE helpline. It's specialized in support to victims of homicide, terrorism, and mass victimization. The CARE help network. It's a specialized support network for children and youth victims of sexual violence. The SAFE network for foreign victims, hate crime and human trafficking and exploitation victims. And the more recent network, Maïlys, could be translated as MORE, and it's a specialized network for elderly victims of crime and violence. So APAV gives support to all types of victims, not only gender-based victims or domestic violence victims. So we'll have this wide range of support to everybody that can be, every citizen that can be victim of crime in Portugal. So I will be talking about this project that was held here in Coimbra, in the Victim Support Office of APAV in Coimbra. This project the ratio, it started in 2011 and ended in March 2015. So it's been a long time that we don't work so close to this theme about preventing sexual violence. The aim of this project was the prevention of sexual violence, especially among college students or higher education students. And also we want to strengthen the APAV's intervention in the field of the prevention of sexual violence within the university environment, focusing on intimate partner sexual violence. This project was held here in Coimbra because this city is very known by its university, and it hosts more than 3,000 college students. And also it is known by its academic festivities, where some risk factors are exist, like the substance abuse and other behaviors that can contribute for the increasing of sexual violence. So about this project, I will focus on only two activities that we have held that time. I will talk a little bit more about the focus group and the workshops on prevention, but we have had some other activities like the prevention campaign, like this poster that you can see, or also, we have created a best practice handbook, some conferences on sexual violence and on sexuality, a posters contest for students, and also the last activity was we have created this microsite about sexual violence, both in Portuguese and English, because we know that we receive now many foreign students and other migrants. And we think that it's important that the information could be also in English to reach more young people that can see this site. So the focus group was the first activity, and this activity was important because it was we could seek information for the other activities, especially for the workshops and for the campaign. This focus group was the first activity. It was a partnership with the Center for Social Studies from the University of Coimbra. They have the aim was to gather information of the perception of the students of the phenomena of sexual violence and other associated issues. And they run the 6 groups, focus groups with the students, to mix it, 2 groups with only female and 2 with male students. And in the end, this team from the Center Studies Center made this report. And these are some of the conclusions that I want to share with you, because we think that they are important for what was made after the focus group. So one of the conclusions is that the academic path is a period of liminarities lived by the students. They think themselves as inside and outside adulthood. Also, students in this period, they are redefining their identity based on the experience they have, and they are setting personal and group limits. So higher education students also dissociate themselves as citizens in their perception of violence, because they don't find themselves totally adults. And so this dissociation of the perception of violence lead that they do not report the situations of violence they live, and they do not activate prevention mechanisms. Also, they alert colleagues to the situations that may cause violence, particularly in the context of casual relationships. The students still maintain a traditional position of not interfering in more consolidated dating relationships. Also, and this is a specificity of the academic world, especially in Coimbra, but not only in Coimbra. I'm sorry, I think something went wrong. Is that there is this academic pressure. Pressure is a student-run tradition in Portuguese universities for initiate freshmen into the academic life. And so in this report, one of the conclusions is that this specificity and way in which the prash is dealt with perpetuates and reproduces behaviors of submission, psychological and even physical violence, the acceptance of authority and hierarchies, and the predominance of a patriarchal, masculine and sexist model. Other conclusion is that the marked and rapid changes in the roles and expectations of female students in higher education, and so they oscillate between a traditional logic of respectability and the desire for freedom, for search, for transgression, and the institution of new models of behavior. And I want to say also that most of the students that come to Coimbra for the university or the Polytechnic University are from abroad. They came from other cities. Some of these girls have a very restrict education in their homes with their parents, and when they came to Coimbra, it's a whole new world with lots of parties and alcohol and other substances. So as it's normal in this age, they want to experiment the freedom and experiment themselves, but they oscillate between this desire for freedom and also to maintain this traditional logic of respectability that is associated with women. So prevention will have to emerge from the slow realization that intimate partner violence also challenges young people, that small acts of coercion in everyday life can be the beginning of a process of victimization, and that citizenship is only possible with freedom and without any form of domination and hierarchy. These workshops were important. Also, this focus group was important, as I said, because they could give us information to structure the workshops that we have held. Also, there in this other study in Portugal, it said that university students may be more exposed to a culture of greater risk for the occurrence of this type of aggression, as it has been found that attitudes and practices that encourage the dominance of men, the objectification and exploitation of women are more common in the university context. So in these workshops, we try to disseminating prevention and safety strategies to the students. We try to break up the myths regarding sexual violence, the beliefs that are behind the sexual violence, promoting communication and assertiveness skills. And these workshops, most of them were held with the support from some students' association, and here in Coimbra especially with help and support and the partnership with social services, both from the Polytechnic University of Coimbra and the University of Coimbra. And these workshops were in three kinds of workshops. the awareness raising or training workshop for small groups, where we develop topics that particularly interested the participants, like the communication skills. The other one was a lecture for larger groups in an assembly room with special focus on preventive information, and the ones that we love doing was the tertulia or talk workshop in small groups with free debate, and we think that these talks within small groups had good results on raising participants' awareness on preventing sexual violence. These talks were made with the help of the social services from the Polytechnic and from the university. We have gone to the students' residency, and we had a large range of in small groups, but many students from different backgrounds and from different schools and courses. For instance, we had when we open a workshop with the free inscriptions, we had only psychological students or law students, and in these talks within the students' residences, we could have engineering or agriculture students and education students with anthropology and mathematics and all the courses that are available in both university and the Polytechnic. So we could reach a large number of not only a large number of people, but also we think that the information was more we'll have more results, and we think that participants get out of from these talks with more awareness about the prevention of sexual violence. In these workshops, we talk about sexual violence. We share the concept of sexual violence. And especially we try to focus on the concept of consent. So sexual violence against adults refers to any sexual act or attempted act, sexual advance or comment made against a person without a person's free desire or consent. We also focus that the existence of sexual violence is not dependent on the use of physical force, and that psychological intimidation, threats, and use of power also constitute acts of violence. So this is all the physical, sexually abusive behavior that like unwanted sexual contact by the victim, such as touching, caressing, forced kisses, on the genitals, for instance, breasts or other parts of the body. Also, the sexually abusive behavior that does not involve direct physical sexual contact between victim and perpetrator, and sexually coercive behaviors in which one person imposes unwanted sexual conduct on another through manipulative strategies. So these types of sexual violence could be unwanted intimate touching, such kissing, caressing, sexual organs or other parts of the body, comments, jokes, or insults of sexual content that cause discomfort or fear, the practice of unwanted sexual acts through intimidation, threat, physical aggression, and of course rape or attempted rape is also the most severe type of sexual violence that can be done. So I will share also some data about sexual violence. That this data was important when we talk in the workshops, because we can say to the participants that it's not something that it's only on our mind, and it's something that's being studied. So these two national Portuguese studies on sexual violence in young adults point to rates between 70 and 24% of sexual victimization since they are entering the higher education system. In the same study, 29.3% of participants in this study on sexual violence in higher education reported having suffered at least one non-consensual sexual act, not only when adults, but also this includes sexual acts that were held when they are children. Some other studies suggest that 57% of rapes occurred on dates, that 90% of victims, they do not report the crime to the authorities, and 95% of sexual assaults in the university context are perpetrated by an acquaintance of the victim, namely a romantic partner. Also, the European survey by the Agency for Fundamental Rights on violence against women, in this European survey, only 4% of Portuguese women surveyed reported being victims of sexual violence, and that was the lowest rate of the 28 member states. However, 60% of Portuguese women highlight violence against women as very common in our country. According to our statistical report, APAV statistical report in 2023, only 1.5% of sexual crimes against adults were reported. So this shows us the difficulties that victims still have in using support services and reporting to the legal authorities, and this is linked to the beliefs and myths about sexual violence that are still common in our society. This is why the support for victims of sexual violence is important. It is estimated that only 1 in 5 female victims report their experience of sexual victimization, with the proportion being bigger, even lower in male victims. So men have more shame to report that they are victims of sexual victimization. So we don't have so much information about male victims. Sexual violence, namely rape, is often pointed out as the most traumatic criminal experience in the adult population. And as it has been said already, victims of sexual violence are at higher risk of secondary victimization, repeated victimization, and intimidation. So to help these victims, we have made this handbook with good practices. I will share only some of these good practices. This handbook is free in the HAPAV site. I think it's only in Portuguese, but for those in Portugal that are hearing us, if someone wants to seek for this handbook, it's available in our site. Some of these good practices are the empowerment, of course, the validation of rights and decisions of the victim, and especially the understanding for the oppression that victim feels. It's important in these cases of sexual violence to inform the victims about the importance of the preservation of evidence, the importance to the referral to the police, to the hospital emergency, and go to the medical legal office to have a report from this office that will be important for the evidence. One of the things that we try to do with these victims is that APAV gives the personal accompaniment of the victim in all the proceedings, if the victim wants, of course. We try to avoid leaving the victim alone. We give support in the contact with other professionals, and we as professionals must demonstrate serenity and trust when we are with the victim. Also, we'll try to optimize the institution's resources, not only our resources, but other institution resources, and helping with the contacts, for instance, with family and friends. Sometimes the victims need someone to talk with family and friends on our behalf. Of course, our support is also to promote safety in the victim's daily life, and we must agree with the victim if she wants to continue the support in our office, or if she doesn't want we can refer her to other services. So in this UNIsexo project that is already over, it had ended in 2015. The conclusions were that the prevention of sexual violence in the context of higher education is a topic that still receives little attention, and the special vulnerability of students is related to the physical and social environment, and to the lack of information and awareness regarding the risk. So there is a need to work on issues related to verbal and non-verbal communication, assertiveness, and security strategies. The need for students' involvement in awareness and prevention processes, and the need for specialized support centers for victims of sexual violence, the so-called rape crisis. But some time has passed, so these are my conclusions about what has changed 10 years later from this UNIsexo project. And I think even so, there's a lot of things that must be done in the Portuguese society. In the last years, I think that the awareness about sexual violence among the community is greater than it was before. That has to do what we call the Portuguese Me Too movement. There are numerous reports of situations of sexual harassment and violence in various contexts, but in particularly in university and higher education institutions. And in Coimbra, we have one very known situation that still goes on with a report from several victims of sexual harassment. Also, in the last years, we have these reports of sexual abuse of children and youth by priests of the Catholic Church, and this have a very this reports have a very important focus on the in the media, so the community became more aware about sexual violence in all contexts. Some of the academic festivities, some student association created campaigns on sexual violence and harassment, and in Coimbra, the Students Association from the University of Coimbra created what they call a safe point in these academic festivities, that's music concerts, big music concerts with lots of that held not only students but many other people that come to these musical concerts. So it's a place where the risk factors of sexual violence increase, and so they have created this safe point with students that are trained to give support to other students. Other mass events in Portugal are beginning to show concern about the prevention of sexually abused behavior and other crimes. And for instance, when the World Youth Days by the Catholic Church were held in Lisbon, they have made a protocol with APAV for the prevention of crimes and also to the support of crime victims. Some universities and other higher education institutions created sexual harassment helplines through the student ombudsman. And these are very important because some of these helplines allow anonymous communication, so it will help the university to understand what's going on and to try to give these victims a proper response to their situation. As far as I know, there is only one rape crisis center created in Lisbon by another organization. It's not from APAV, it's from the Association, Women's Association Against Violence. And also, it was created a new non-governmental organization specialized in the support of male victims of sexual violence. And this organization is very important because it gives attention to some of the victims that are forgotten, mostly forgotten, that are the male victims. Still, I think there are still few complaints communicated to not only to the support services but also to the police and to the justice. But here at the Victim Support Coimbra office, we notice a slight increase in reports from higher education students, and I believe that what we have done in 2011 and 2015 as a role in this, because we have strengthened our relationship with the social services of the Polytechnic University of Coimbra and from the University of Coimbra, and this is being fundamental for providing support to student victims. We talk a lot with these social services, with social workers and psychologists, and even to the doctors, and when we have some situation that comes to us and with the need from a help from social services, we contact them, and the other way also happens. So we try to, I think that was our opportunity to enter in the field of the university and to reach the students, victims, because, as I said before, students do not find themselves as victims, so they do not report what it's happening with them. So above, actually nowadays we don't have a specific project for preventing sexual violence in universities or in other contexts, but the products of the Unisexu project continue to be used, namely the Unisexu handbook, but also we continue to do workshops when we are asked or when we can. APAV continues to improve support for all victims, including victims of sexual violence, and it has created in 2015 this special service, APAV Care, which supports children and youth victims of sexual violence. And the good practices that are created in these special services also are used to support adult victims. And now we have in national, in most all of our services, we have a psychologist specialized in sexual violence to give support to these victims.
Talia,
So,
we have to stop. I see
yes.
that. Yeah.
Yes, I'm done.
1 minute.
I'm done.
Okay.
I'm done. Thank you very much.
Well, it was so interesting that I didn't want to stop you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very good presentation.
Thank you.
So I'm impressed. And I will, because the time is over, but there is one remark and like a question, but very short answer if you can. And the question is this: in our day, psychological violence, including cyber violence, seems to be surprising physical violence. The possibility of violence hidden behind a screen seems to be gaining ground. do you think that influencer culture may be fueling this trend? Do you know any measures in the various countries, in your case in Portugal, or on the development of cyber literacy programs to as early as possible, explaining to our children and young people about the danger of excessive exposure on social networks, which can contribute to this type of violence and abuse? Well,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, my answer is yes to these two questions. First, yes, personally, I think that the influencer culture may be increasing this kind of violence, cyber violence, but also what I'm questioning is in what measure we can use the influence culture the other way around. To prevent. So maybe it is important that some influencers use their influence in the networks, in all the social networks, to pass some prevention information. And but we are fighting a very strong force. Yeah, it's very. And whenever we're trying to do a prevention campaign, we are already late in what matters to cyber world. So we are already late because when we are starting to understand and seek what we can do, the internet is in a step ahead. So it's very difficult to do it. And yes, we have, as I said, APAV is also in charge of the internet helpline, security helpline in Portugal. It's a consortium of many institutions, but APAV is with a helpline, and we try to do these programs to literacy about the use of internet. Yes, we try to do it. Of course,
yes.
We cannot. It's not easy, and as someone said before, I think what the most difficult, the difficulty for every organization is human resources. So we have to have money and human resources, like has been said already, because without that, it's more difficult to reach the targets that we want.
Yes, thank you very much again, and thank you to all the speakers. Just for the people that are in the room, please, I will share again my screen, and you can take this survey if you want. Just probably you see this QR code. And in conclusion, just 1 minute. Today we saw 4 different presentations. They underline some of the aspects of the gender-based violence and personal and social problems. I think by showing this and getting involved in this, we all became better people. We understood that even though we are not victims personally, we are always victims socially. We cannot feel happy knowing that someone is being violated and he's not happy and he suffers. So let's start from now and proactively work together against all forms of violence, especially gender-based violence. We have to get more and more people involved and more institutions involved. I hope the university, Green European University, UNIgreen, becomes the platform for this. So you can find UNIgreen on internet, just find it and follow its activities. You will be involved in many other interesting activities that are socially and environmentally and in any other aspects important for everyday life of young people and everybody. Thank you again for joining us today for this UNIgreen Equality Days, where we discussed with our 4 speakers, Vanesa, Maïlys, Emilia, and Natália. Thank you again for your presentations and for your time. And let's stay in touch and follow each other in the social networks or anywhere. Thank you very much again.